Hey everyone, it's Jackie from Vegan Yak Attack, and I'm back with a brand new video and recipe for you. And today's video is a little different because not only do I have a delicious recipe that we'll be making, but I'm incorporating a bit of a review on my favorite dual air fryer countertop oven that I got from KitchenAid and that I bought with my own monies. Like I said in last week's video, it's become one of my new favorite toys. So excited. So I've included this recipe. We're gonna make this first, and then after that I'll mark where you can watch all of the more like behind the scenes of the daily testing that I did with it, because there are several settings. We've got air fry, bake, broil, reheat, warm, toast, bagel, proof, dehydrate, and then just a straight up convection setting to add to the oven setting, or bake setting rather. So there was a lot to test before I could like really give you my full opinion, and I like to be very thorough. The only one that I haven't tried yet is the proofing. I did check it out the other day just to see what the setting was like, obviously before I finished the wrap up on my thoughts on it. But the reason why I got it is because KitchenAid, I have an affiliate relationship with them, and they said, oh, this one's on sale if you want to, promote it. And I was like, but I want it. So I asked for an early Christmas present. And that's why I have it. But I thought I would share because once I posted it in my stories, I had a lot of people asking because air fryers are, a hot topic. And I had an air fryer. So I actually am getting rid of now my air fryer, my, toaster oven, my toaster, because I had both, and then also my dehydrator. So for appliances that take up too much room, now I have this, and it proofs. So let's do something that involves the proofing, right? So the recipe that we're testing this out with is a winter squash focaccia. It's very festive. I've got some thinly sliced, winter squash here. Now, before I mix anything together, I'm going to turn the proofing setting on just to get it warm. The one thing that I did notice is that the longest setting you'll see, so this is how you change the time, and if you want to change the degrees, you just click it and then change it. We're gonna leave it at 90, which is pretty warm, and so it should accelerate this. But like I said, the proofing time, the limit on there is an hour. And so if you're doing sourdough or something like that, you're just gonna have to keep turning it on, or maybe you just leave it because it'll stay warmer than your kitchen. But that's just something to keep in mind. It will work great for something a little bit more quick, like this focaccia, where we have like an hour altogether of proofing time, but part of that is a first and then a second. So like I said, something to keep in mind. Sourdough proofing takes far longer. That might be more of like if you have a whole oven, use the light in there to keep it warm. But I really like having this option so that when I'm preheating this to make the bread, that will be still warm, even though my kitchen is 68 right now and it gets cooler at night. Okay, so we have our warm water. We have our all-purpose flour. You can also use half bread flour if you want, but all-purpose flour works fine here. And the reason why I kept the Carnival squash here is because we're using a half cup, which is obviously not a lot. I've thinly sliced it on a mandolin and then like quartered it, you see. So I'm going to include some squash recipes below so that you can use the rest of your squash up. You're not like, what the hell do I do with this, Jackie? So got plenty of squash recipes on my website. I'll link a few really good ones in the description below for you. Meanwhile, I'll get rid of this. Oop. So now, we are going to just basically mix everything together. Because we're using instant yeast, it doesn't need to like this proofing time before where it starts bubbling and activating. It's much quicker than active dry yeast. Now, we won't really need our toppings yet. So like I said, we have vegan feta, these fresh cranberries. You could use frozen and thawed cranberries as well. And then we have our squash and rosemary. Did I already mention the coarse salt? Coarse salt, in case I didn't. So we'll be using really basic ingredients first. We have our flour, like I said. I'm gonna add the sugar in, and that's basically to help the yeast eat. Then we have our instant yeast. We have our salt, or sea salt in this case, which is fine. So we're gonna stir this together just to mix that those dry ingredients. Okay, now I have a little well in there. I'm going to add in my warm water. And you want it like cooler than 100 degrees basically, or like in the 90s works, or 85 degrees. We have a few tablespoons of olive oil, plus you'll need some for topping and putting in the pan. This is a very olive oil heavy recipe because that's what focaccia is. You can try to avoid the olive oil, it's just not gonna be the same bread. So I don't really recommend that. I love the way focaccia is just generally, I just love it so much. All right, so now we'll stir that together until we can get it into a state where we can knead it. And luckily, because we're using instant yeast here, the satisfaction of enjoying the focaccia is not too far away. It's not like making sourdough focaccia where you have to wait, 8 to 12 hours or a day or something like that. No, this is like an hour away. It's not too bad. Okay, got it nice and shaggy. You can also use a mixer. I do have a KitchenAid mixer in the corner. I just didn't feel like getting it out. And I think they have some sales on that as well. And focaccia is a pretty wet dough. So don't worry that it's like sticky, and I'm going to knead this more with my hands. So make sure your hands are clean, no rings on, okay? It's sticky, but this is the life we live right now, making focaccia. And then once it rises, the gluten will develop more, so it won't seem as scraggly as this. Kind of like how with the seitan the gluten developed and then it became like more stretchy. So that's what's gonna happen here. So like I said, you can use a dough hook in your mixer for this if you don't want to get your hands dirty. And then after the first rise, if it still seems a little too wet, I'll just roll it in a little flour so it's a little easier to spread out in the baking pan. So for this, and this is actually why I wanted to test this recipe for proofing in the dual oven air fryer, is because it comes with its own sheet pan that's 9x13, but this also is 9x13, and this is what I use to bake focaccia in. And so for the second proof, I can just leave it in here and proof it in there, which is great. I don't have to do it in the oven or anything. It's gonna have a nice contained space, and it fits perfectly in there. I already tested it out to make sure I didn't eat my words right. So I'll put that back over here. That's the air fry basket. You'll see that later in the video. All right, let me get this off of my hands. And the one thing that I did worry about that I actually haven't tried is seeing how big of a bowl I could fit in there. So we're about to find out, because I would like this to double in size, so I don't really want to move it to a smaller bowl. So worst case scenario, I just do the first proof in the oven since it is a little chilly in here. But I'm hoping that this fits fine. I think I have a bowl that's slightly smaller. We'll see. Now we can cover it with a cloth. Let's see if this fits. Oh my goodness. I think we've done it with this towel. Okay, the towel is not really fitting, but you see, this fits in there somehow. Somehow this fits in here. So I'm actually gonna leave the towel off since this is a closed, situation. It's not like there's air blowing everywhere. And now we'll leave that. And since it's at 90, I'm going to proof it for a half hour. If your kitchen or if your oven is around like 80, it may be, half hour, 45 minutes. Just basically wait till it doubles in size at the very least. Okay, so it's been about 40 minutes and I thought about something as we're testing out this proofing business in this dual oven. I have no idea how long it takes my oven to reach a warm temperature with the light on. So after I make this bread and everything, I'm going to do a comparison, just like on my phone or whatever, because I put a thermometer in here and it warmed up to about like 80 degrees after 20 minutes. So even though I have it set at like 95, obviously it didn't get there. And I think it is just using the light to warm up the area as opposed to like any additional coils or anything like that. So I'll take the thermometer out. Well, it was just on. You see, look at that. So now we have our beautiful dough ball. So now we're going to take our 9x13 casserole dish or baking pan. I really like this one for focaccia. Then I have some flour because we're definitely gonna need some to like spread it out. So first, actually, let's take this. I have some olive oil here. I actually infused this with some rosemary, which is super easy. You just literally leave the rosemary in there. You can put some garlic in there too if you want, whatever. So I like using this olive oil for like this kind of application where I can drizzle it instead of having like, I have a massive bottle of olive oil and it's a bit too much for like selective drizzling. Just spread this all around. And set that aside. Now, take my non-dirty hand and put some flour on our working surface. Spread that out. And then pull this away from the edges. If you were a neater person than you could have transferred this to a clean bowl that was oiled, but you see that this works fine. I don't make the rules and I clearly don't follow them sometimes, but you don't really need to oil the bowl every time. Now, woo, this is nice and sticky and like loose. So, I guess I can knead it a couple times. Get some bubbles in here. Oh, I love the consistency of this dough. So yeah, we're gonna fold it over a couple times, get some of those bubbles going. I can feel them kind of like, oh, did you hear that squeak? Whoop. So there's definitely some bubbles going on in there. And now, I'm gonna roll this out. I was gonna pull it, but I feel like I might tear the gluten a little too much. So I'm gonna get my rolling pin to roll this out a little closer to the dimensions of that pan. Got my big rolling pin. Ooh. Oh, look at all that. Oh, you really want, ooh, the focaccia farted. You really want those air bubbles in there. So I don't want to press, I guess, too hard, because then when it bakes, you'll get these nice big bubbles and, oh, I'm so excited for this. If y'all couldn't tell, just obsessed with food. So try and spread this out. I think now I'll do it in here. It'll stick kind of like where the olive oil is. All right, so just, pull it as close as you can to the edges of the pan, because it's gonna expand again. So this is like a little small. It's okay if it like doesn't fill the whole thing anyways. It's just gonna be really delicious. Okay, I think that's good. Now we're going to do a second rising. So it'll be like another 20 to 30 minutes, which is why I turned the proofer back on before we started, and then we'll do the dimpling and drizzling and the topping and everything. Okay, moment of truth. I actually let this go woohoo! Quite a bit longer, probably 20 minutes longer, so maybe like 45 minutes altogether. You see how that small little dough turned into this nice big one. I mean, it didn't completely fill the corners, but that's all right. It doesn't need to be a big old thing. So I will say, since I had a little extra time, I did do a little bit of a test. I didn't end up recording it because I'm just telling you now. So I turned on the light for my oven because that's usually where I have my sourdough starter in its jar, like sitting there in a towel, right, to like keep it warm during the winter. I put the thermometer in there with the light. It went from like 65 degrees to 75 degrees and kind of topped out at 76, even after probably half an hour. So it definitely took longer to get warmer in the oven than it did here, I assume because this is much smaller. But also when I took this out of there, even though it was set at 100 degrees, the thermometer that I put inside read at like 85. So that still is a good proofing temperature. I'm not sure that would actually get up to 100 degrees, especially like within that hour. I think maybe that's just adjusted by the brightness of the lamp in the back. So either way, it worked well, especially because like I said before, it's pretty cool in the kitchen right now. What we are going to do, make sure you have clean hands, is drizzle about a tablespoon, could be a little bit more, of olive oil over the top of this. And now, we're just gonna stab it with those focaccia holes, you know, definitely deflated quite a bit. Hope it comes back up. That would be good, right? So definitely deflated a bit. And because I just turned on the oven to preheat, it'll sit here for another, like, I don't know, probably 10 to 15 minutes before we put it in. So it'll give it enough time to kind of oomph up just a bit. So here we have that. Now we're just going to spread out some of these squash pieces. And I coated these in a little bit of oil so they didn't burn too much. Now we have our cranberries, and this might even be too many. I'm just gonna stick a couple of these in the little holes throughout. All right, so I think a 1/4 cup of these would probably be fine. I think this was about a 1/3 cup. Now we have our vegan feta. And I kept this in the refrigerator up until this moment because I didn't want it to just like completely melt into the focaccia. Oh, this is gonna be delicious. I'm very excited. And if you make your own, it's not gonna be quite as like crumbly as this. It's a little smaller than I probably would have liked. And because there's a couple different brands of vegan feta at this point, you know, you can cut them into cubes so you don't just have it all over the top. Okay, now I'm going to take a sprig of rosemary, of fresh rosemary, and just pull off some of the leaves. Don't really need to chop this up. And with the rosemary olive oil, which I did smell as I was, you know, layering it on, this will be great. Oh. Try not to get any like big stem because that'll just get like woody as it's roasting, which is not very appealing. Lastly, a little Salt Bae action. Have some coarse salt. Oh, wow. Just doing the most. You really just want like maybe a 1/2 teaspoon to a teaspoon, you know, depending on how salty you want it. The cheese actually is quite salty, so I'm gonna stop there. Before, it's pretty excited. So while this is preheating, I am going to cover this back up. And since this is probably still a little warm in there, I'm just gonna put it in there while we're waiting for the oven to hit 425. Well, that ended up being a few minutes longer than I anticipated because I decided to accidentally break much glass and ceramics and water things in the kitchen. So It's risen a little bit, bounced back a little bit. Now we're going to bake it for 18 to 20 minutes, basically until it's nice and golden brown on top, or a little darker brown, medium brown. But yeah, we're gonna bake it for 18 to 20 minutes at 425. All right, it's been 22 minutes. I wanted it to brown a little bit longer. Got the handy little cooling rack that comes with our dual oven over here. Ooh! Y'all, look at that. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is hot. Understandably so. Wow, though. I mean, that's pretty cute, right? That's pretty cute. So, as with all things bread, we will reluctantly have to wait probably, I don't know, half an hour to an hour before getting into this, before really trying it out. My stomach hates me for this because I'm very hungry. But for the best quality bread, you gotta let it cool down. So that's what we're gonna do. In the meantime, I'm gonna let my B-roll roll, and you'll be able to see all of the fun experiments and things that I did with the countertop oven slash air fry, all the settings that I tested, apple chips made, etc., etc. And then we'll come back and see what the final conclusion of this focaccia is. Today is the day. The countertop oven with air fry is here, plus its many other functions. Let's open her up. Had to take it out of that box and then open the main box. You see it has some suggestions already. Here we go. Here's my large hand for size reference. I'll say this about the packaging. I do wish that they used like the formed cardboard instead of this styrofoam. I feel like we're way past styrofoam at this point. So, ooh. Oh, look how pretty she is. So it comes with a very cute cooling rack. This is a shelf for it. It's like a drip pan, and then comes with a very cute baking sheet that fits in here. And then this is the air fry basket, and I am super stoked at how large this is. Here is why I basically got this, is so that I could possibly get rid of a couple other appliances that I have. I have a dehydrator, so it's nice to know that I can change the temperature range on that. Proofer, you know I love baking. And then obviously the air fry. Bake could be really nice during the summer because my oven doesn't close all the way. Broil for the same reason. Reheat, keep warm, great, bake. And then toast and bagel because we eat a lot of bread and Corey likes Pop-Tarts. First test. 2 slices of bread. Here we go. Ooh. All right, made a little chime. Now we got some toasty breads for a sandwich. Ooh, a little color. Very warm. We got pizza delivered, but frankly, it's not that hot. It's just a little warm, so I'm going to air fry this for the first time, or use the air fryer function for the first time. You just hit start. Here, I think 350 is probably fine. Oh, that's right. So it preheats, and you can wait until it's done preheating if you want. Otherwise, it says that for a lot of things, it's not really a big deal. And I'm sure you can hear it a little bit, but this is honestly far quieter than my other air fryer. That thing sounded like a tornado inside. So once it reaches its preheated temperature, it actually started at like 17 minutes. It's like already sizzling a bit, so I'm just gonna put it down to 2 minutes. And then obviously I just use the little knob to do that. I'm currently using the broil feature. It's at 450. I put this roast in there. Sorry, I got pizza on there. I'm hoping to brown some of these vegetables a little bit. And this is a high temperature. I can definitely feel, you know, some heat emanating for this. Is it quite as bad as my oven? This door doesn't close all the way. I don't think so. It's been about 8 minutes. I adjusted the time and I added a little bit more. But for an electric broiler, this really isn't too bad. You can see that it's cooking the top of the seitan roast. There's definitely a lot of sizzling happening in here. All right, here's a close-up. You can see there's some nice browning. I mean, obviously with vegan shreds, it's gonna be hit or miss. I probably should have spritzed this with a little water because steam helps them melt, but nice and crispy. Smells really good. I had some apples that were getting a little wrinkly on the countertop, so let's make some apple chips, shall we? Let's see here. Dehydrate. We'll do like 115. Start. 6 hours. We'll see. I used the air fryer rack and then also just the regular like oven rack that's in here. Oh, this is what's making noise. Not too loud. I cut them a little thick, so I'll come and check on them in 6 hours. Forgot to update on this. Definitely ate some testers. Because I cut these so thick originally, I ended up extending the dehydration time by a few hours, and I increased the temperature a bit, but they're nice and dehydrated. So I just used the toaster function to make a little melt. Delicious. I had this on the 5 darkness setting to reheat the seitan bread and some vegan cheese with chopped veggies. So I'm making another melt in here, and I had to say, because this is on the air fry setting and it's just preheating, I am a fan of the convection oven in this because my slices of cheese actually stay on my sandwich. Whereas with my other air fryer, they would just be flying around everywhere because the air power was way too strong. All right, so in summation, what have we learned today? That the countertop oven is good for proofing as long as your bowl isn't too big and gets warmer than your oven with a light on, even though that's still helpful for longer proofing times because that has an hour limit. Great at air frying. The convection setting is a lifesaver. I used it also as my second oven during Thanksgiving dinner, basically, even though it was just 2 of us. And then you saw in the last video that I used the broil setting for the seitan roast. Works excellently given that it's electric, so not quite as quick as gas, but still pretty good. So I think honestly, I mean, like I said, I'm getting rid of 3 or 4 different countertop appliances with this one, which I think is a pretty good deal given that, like I said, it's on sale. So again, the product link is in the caption, and I'm sure if you watch this video and it's not on sale, it probably will be at some other point. But either way, worth it even at full price. And it's a little smaller and definitely better looking than some of the other ones that I've seen. So again, I bought that with my own money. I'm not paid to, you know, pimp out KitchenAid, but I do have, the link is an affiliate link. So if you buy through it, it will support me a little bit. You won't have to pay any extra. Now, let's break into this focaccia. I waited probably like 20, 30 minutes. The good thing about focaccia is that because it's thin, which by the way, I should have showed you, when it's done, you can see it's like pulling away from the edges. Let's look at the bottom. Oh, I'm so happy with this. This is exciting. Oops, sorry for the loud noises. So let's see. I'm just gonna dig in. I'm just gonna cut a slice. This is always great served with a little extra like olive oil or balsamic vinegar, you know, mixed together. kind of like a restaurant type of thing. Delicious, or just toast it up. You can toast it back up in your little air fryer if you want. Look at that. The squash is in the way. Look at that beautiful bready texture. So nice and soft. I love it. I'm gonna get a cranberry in the next bite because I want to see how that tartness. I love that these like all popped. You could hear them popping in the oven as it was baking. It's so beautiful. I love it. Very into that. Wow. I cannot wait to snack on this for the rest of the week. Yum, yum, yum. And even though I sprinkled some salt, it may have like cooked out just a teeny bit. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it just got a little here, but those big crystals, so good. So if you don't have coarse salt, I really recommend getting some to use as a finishing salt because it gives you those nice pops as opposed to kind of like melting into the food and going a little bit more unnoticed. So this whole recipe is in the caption below, or the link to it rather, for the printable recipe. And if you like this video and this recipe, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you later.